In 1984, in the Soviet Union, the Soviet military tries to puncture a hole in the fabric of our dimension and into the upside down. Their efforts prove fruitless, but they are determined to find a solution. 1 year later, Mike meets with Sam, Lucas, and Will at the newly opened Starcourt Mall, where they encounter Steve, now working in an ice cream shop, and his colleague Robin. Meanwhile, Nancy has also found a new job as an assistant working for the local newspaper, the Hawkins Post. When at the movies Will's senses are spiked, indicating activity from the upside down, Nancy receives a phone call from an elderly woman named Doris about strange behaving rats. Unbeknownst to all of them, the rats converge to the abandoned steel mill and melt down into a gooey substance, forming a larger being. When Dustin then returns from science camp, he reveals to his friends that he met a girl there named Susie. Trying to communicate with her, he has built a makeshift radio and persuaded the rest to join him on a hill to get the best reception. But when Susie does not answer his radio calls, his friends leave him. Just then, Dustin finally picks up some messages, but they turn out to be cryptic Russian sentences. While working as a lifeguard, Billy flirts with Karen Wheeler and arranges a date with her for that night. On his way to this date, Billy is attacked in his car and is taken to the steel mill by a tentacled being. After being attached to the strange being, Billy escapes the mill and has visions of himself and the upside down. The following day, Nancy convinces Jonathan to join her in her investigation of the strange behaving rats. Arriving at Doris's home, she and Jonathan witness one of the rats bursting into the gooey substance. At the mall, Dustin goes to visit Steve and tells him about the strange Soviet messages. They manage to translate and crack the messages with help from Robin. However, Steve also hears music in the background of the messages and discovers that the same music is playing in the mall, and thus the messages must have been recorded there. Somewhere else in the mall, Eleven confronts Mike for not calling her back. He reveals to her that Hopper had scared him into calling her back, causing her to break up their relationship. When protesters, whom are against the arrival of the mall, are causing trouble for Mayor Klein, Hopper is summoned to have the protesters leave and sees a strange tall man leaving the mayor's office. The same man who was in the Soviet military facility a year ago. At the swimming pool, Billy is shown to be infected with something from the upside down. When his co-worker Heather tries to help him, he attacks and kidnaps her, taking her to the steel mill ready to be sacrificed to the creature. Curious as to what their friends and family are doing, Eleven and Max decide to spy on them using Eleven's powers. While spying on Billy, Eleven is shocked when seeing Billy kidnap Heather. At his house, Hopper is visited by Joyce, who tells him about the magnets losing their magnetic pull and proposes to visit the Hawkins National Laboratory to find answers. Reluctantly agreeing with her, she and Hopper arrive at the laboratory. Hearing a noise from within, Hopper decides to further investigate and stumbles upon the big man he saw at the mayor's office. In the ensuing fight, Hopper is beaten up, allowing the man to escape. Further investigating the rats, Nancy and Jonathan again visit Doris, only to find the old woman eating chemicals. At the mall, Robin successfully decodes the messages and explains to Dustin and Steve the decoded messages reveal the drop-off of shipments at 9:45 at a Soviet-guarded facility in the mall. Having seen Billy kidnap Heather, Eleven and Max visit the swimming pool where Eleven uses a photo of Heather to locate her. They eventually end up at the house of Heather's parents, where Heather, her parents, and Billy are seemingly having dinner. However, when Eleven and Max leave, Billy and Heather drug her parents so as to take them to the steel mill. At Doris's house, the old woman is taken to the hospital for having gone crazy. Meanwhile, Hopper realizes that the big man is the same guy he saw at the mayor. When going back to Mayor Klein, he forces him to reveal that the man is a Soviet named Grigory, who works for the Starcourt Mall owners. At the mall, Dustin, Steve, and Robin come up with the plan to use the air conditioning vents to get inside the guarded warehouse. They persuade Erica, Lucas' sister, to use the vents, and she opens the door for them. Once inside, they find boxes that are filled with canisters containing a green liquid. But before they can escape with a sample, the room they're in is revealed to be an elevator, which is taking them deeper into the underground facility. While every group is trying to solve their own puzzle, 11 and Max meet up with Mike, Lucas, and Will. Will reveals to them that the Mind Flayer is possibly still alive in their dimension and is looking for a new host. Believing Billy to be the new host, they plan to capture him in the sauna of the swimming pool, since the Mind Flayer has shown that it doesn't like heat. After luring Billy to the pool, they trap him in the sauna. When turning up the heat, Billy is indeed shown to be the host, but manages to escape back to the mill where numerous adults are standing by to do the Mind Flayer's bidding. Going to another one of the properties bought by the mall owners, Hopper and Joyce encounter two Soviet scientists working in a secret bunker and decide to take one of them, Alexei, with them. They decide to take Alexei to Murray Bauman, an investigative journalist. Unable to get the elevator going up, Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica go deeper inside the underground facility to reach the communication room and call for help. They sneakily make their way to the comms room and encounter a perplexed Soviet, but before he can raise the alarm, Steve overpowers him. Just then, in the room next to them, the Soviets manage to hold open the gate to the Upside Down. Meanwhile, 11's group meet up with Nancy and Jonathan. They have an exchange of information and realize that some of the adults, including Billy and Doris, are under the influence of the Mind Flayer, dubbing these people the Flayed. Nancy believes that the Mind Flayer is coordinating his invasion from a central position, giving Mike the idea to free Doris so she can guide them to it. However, soon after they arrive in the hospital to free Doris, Nancy and Jonathan are attacked by the Flayed. Bundling their powers, they manage to defeat these hive-minded Flayed, but watch in horror when they morph into the gooey substance and become one giant monster. Chasing Nancy through the hospital, the creature corners her and is about to kill her. Just then, 11 shows up and flings the being out of the window and onto the streets, where it flees back to the Mind Flayer's base. In the secret Soviet facility under the mall, the alarm is raised by the guards Steve beat up and they are forced to flee for their lives. While Dustin and Erica manage to escape, Steve and Robin are captured and interrogated by a Soviet colonel. But using the highly acidic liquid in the green canisters and a cattle prod, Dustin and Erica make it to the room where Steve and Robin are held and manage to free their friends. At Bauman's home, Alexei eventually starts telling them about the Soviet operation in Hawkins. That they are using the electricity grid to try to hold open a gate to the Upside Down with a machine called the Key. And that Hawkins was the best place they could open a doorway since an opening had been recently shut. Hearing all of this, Hopper calls Sam Owens, the new director at the Hawkins lab, to bring the might of the US government into play. Having retreated to Hopper's cabin, 11 and her group decide to look for Billy in hopes of finding the Mind Flayer. Using her powers, 11 enters the void and finds Billy in his house. Searching further, she witnesses memories of Billy's abusive father, but is then confronted by the Mind Flayer using Billy's body. The creature tells her that it is coming for her. With the Flayed then converging on the mill and being reshaped, the Mind Flayer reaches its final form. Having finally unlocked the elevator, Dustin and Erica transport Steve and Robin out of the secret facility. With the Soviets still chasing them, they try to blend in a theater. Meanwhile, Alexei explains to Hopper and his group that the machine can only be turned off by 2 keys and gives them the codes for the keys, which is Planck's constant, a mathematical number. Fulfilling its promise to 11, the Mind Flayer makes it to their cabin and starts attacking them. It manages to grab 11's leg and enters her body, but the tendril is quickly cut off by Lucas. Using a shotgun, an axe, and 11's powers, the group manages to repel the Mind Flayer's attack. With 11 wounded, the kids visit a store to patch up her infected leg as best they can. Just then, Dustin calls Mike on the radio, but the message is cut short. At the fair, Hopper and his group encounter the Soviets who suddenly show up and kill Alexei. Witnessing this, Hopper has Joyce get the car while he has a showdown with Grigory. He's able to incapacitate the Soviet and even manages to steal one of their radios and is then scooped up by Joyce and Bauman. Via the radio, they learn that the kids are at the mall. With 11 having located Dustin and his group, she and her party arrive just in time to save him and the rest from the guards. When 11 then becomes increasingly sick due to the Mind Flayer's infection in her leg, she uses her powers to remove the creature from her body. Hopper and his group then also arrive. Together they plan to close the gate to the Upside Down to sever the Mind Flayer's brain from its body. While Dustin and his group go to his makeshift radio to guide Hopper's group through the air vents, 11's group is tasked to take 11 to safety. But when they try to escape the mall, Billy shows up and the group retreats back to the mall. To make matters worse, the Mind Flayer arrives as well and starts hunting the wounded 11. With Billy also closing in, 11 persuades him to turn on the Mind Flayer, which he does, forcing the creature to kill him. In the underground facility, Hopper and his group make it to the room to use their keys. Thanks to Susie, who has given the correct number for Planck's constant after being healed by Dustin, Hopper and Joyce now have the working code. However, before they can close the doorway, Grigori arrives but is thrown in the machine by Hopper, with Hopper also being stuck there. He then signals Joyce to turn the keys and close the gate, fully knowing that it will cost him his life. Reluctantly, Joyce closes the gate, killing the physical manifestation of the Mind Flayer in our dimension and escapes the facility with Bauman. Sam Owens and the US military then arrive and clean the place up. Several months later, 11 has moved in with the Byers and they pack up and leave Hawkins. Meanwhile, in a Soviet prison, an unknown American is held prisoner, while another prisoner is offered as dinner to a Demogorgon.